Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical. My article over the weekend was about China turning 70. I started by quoting Don DeLillo, "Longing on a large scale makes history," wrote Don DeLillo, and these words streamed into my consciousness as I watched the celebrations in Tiananmen Square, which were marking the 70th anniversary of Chinese Communist Party rule. Xi Jinping and the party were seeking to project national power and confidence on a grand scale. Nothing and nobody was going to reign on this parade. The pomp and pageantry included a parade that involved 15,000 soldiers and sailors, 160 planes, 580 tanks and other weaponry, including what Xijin, President Xi's trusted mouthpiece, described as, "This is the legendary DF-41 ICBM, but it is not a tail. Today, it is displayed at Tiananmen Square. I touched one about 4 years ago in the production plant. No need to fear it, just respect it, and respect China that owns it," he tweeted. My friend Hervé Gogo and I were simultaneously bamboozled by the all-women militia selected from the militia force in Beijing's Chaoyang district, who were a Sun Tzu-level knockout blow and certainly more than the legendary DF-41 ICBM, which Mr. Xijin is welcome to keep as long as he hands over the ladies, who are most welcome to stream in my dreams. President for life Xi has been fending off a trade war and has been dealing with the flaring up on the periphery, but last week was his opportunity to paint on a blank canvas and show the world who he is and what China wishes to be. No force can stop the Chinese people and the Chinese nation forging ahead, he said. The president for life was seeking to project a sense of inevitable forward motion and a fulfillment of the promise that Mao Zedong made on the founding of the People's Republic of China on October the 1st, 1949, that China would stand up. They have stood up. Xi's model is one of technocratic authoritarianism, and a recent addition to his bookshelf included The Master Algorithm by Pedro Domingos. Xi is building an algorithmic society. Some of the Z-era slogans are short and simple in the manner of Western advertising, such as the Chinese dream, the catchphrase embodying the party's aim to become a global power by 2049, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. In a way, this is also nothing new, but Xi has taken the propagation of ideology and the cult of personality to extremes not seen since the days of Chairman Mao. Xi, in fact, has replaced Jesus in the churches and Muhammad in the mosques. Unity is iron and steel. Unity is a source of strength. Complete reunification of the motherland is an inevitable trend, and no one and no force can ever stop it, he added. Today, we know the Chinese economy is slowing, but Xi is relying on Chinese resilience. If there is a decoupling between the two economies, so be it. The Chinese people can endure more pain than the spoiled and hubristic Americans. The folks in Hong Kong, whom Xi is seeking to unmask so he can exercise algorithmic control over them, are in open rebellion. Joshua Wong told German media, "Hong Kong ist das neue Berlin," referencing the Ich bin ein Berliner speech given by the United States President John F. Kennedy on the 26th of June 1963 in West Berlin. I am sure Xi sees Hong Kong and Taiwan like a virus, and he is looking to impose a quarantine, just like he has imposed on Xinjiang. The Chinese dream has become a nightmare at the boundaries of the Han Empire. The world in the 21st century exhibits viral, wildfire and exponential characteristics and feedback loops which only become obvious in hindsight. I would venture that Xi's high watermark is behind him. Shorting the renminbi is a bit of a no-brainer. The pork apocalypse speaks to a very fragile food situation. The periphery requires a lot more finesse than more blunt force. But he can rely on a US president whose dereliction of his international duty is now in plain sight. China will not interfere in the internal affairs of the US, and we trust that the American people will be able to sort out their own problems, China's very subtle Foreign Minister Wang Yi said in response to questions around Trump's pursuit of Biden and his personal political agenda at the price of the US's international agenda. Macro thoughts. You remember on the 19th of August I was saying safe havens are priced for Armageddon now, but I think they're going to come off, frankly. 1st of April I said there's certainly a fin de siècle, even apocalyptic mood afoot. But I added the conundrum for those who wish to bet on the end of the world is this, however, what would be the point? The world would have ended. And then I came across a tweet from Bianco, research, never bet on the end of the world, it's only going to happen once and you cannot get paid. Ex-Credit Suisse CEO calls negative interest rates crazy. Oswald Grubel, who led both of Switzerland's two biggest banks during his career, criticized negative interest rates and argued they'd lead to a further decline of the country's financial sector. Negative interest rates are crazy. That means money is not worth anything anymore, he said. As long as we have negative interest rates, the financial industry will continue to shrink, he said. And that takes me back to the 24th of June and the article I was writing about the Wizard of Oz world. Please take a look at that. Home thoughts. I have some good friends on social media who I'm looking forward to meeting one day. One of them is Therese Jen. And she tweeted, 1 more week of the hills are alive and then I leave this beautiful paradise until Christmas and New Year. And she's taken a photograph of the Bavarian mountains and her photographs are beautiful and lyrical and I love them. This is a photograph by Dion van Aert, Incredible Kenya. And I think I know exactly where that photograph was taken. I'll come to that in a moment. But I also like this one from NTV Uganda, Good Morning, Lake Nabu Gabo. So I think the photograph, the Dion van Aert photograph, Incredible Kenya, was taken at the top of Mount Ololokwe, I'm guessing. And we, in fact, took a helicopter ride to the Mount Ololokwe for breakfast with Sirikoi Lodge and Tropic Air. And we've got some footage of that flight if you want to watch it. It's really fantastic. And this is the view from the top of Ololokwe Mountain, and it really was spectacular. On that visit, I also met Ian Craig, and he said many things, but the thing that stuck in my mind was there will be a way, there always is. And I interviewed him, and that interview is linked on Rich Wrap-Ups as well. And then I went back to this Thomas Pynchon quote, which I love, no matter how the official narrative of this turns out, these are the places we should be looking, not in newspapers or television, but at the margins, graffiti, uncontrolled utterances, bad dreamers who sleep in public and scream in their sleep. I've been watching a lot of spaghetti westerns over the weekend, and it's like a wormhole I've entered, which YouTube does, of course, with its algorithmic machine learning. And in one of these, I came across a pastor reading Ecclesiastes. "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher, "vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, where they flow again, all things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, 'See, this is new'? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to come among those who come after." And then Hervé tweeted me Jorge Luis Borges, The Art of Fiction, and in that article they're describing the library that is behind him, and I love seeing what people are reading because it gives you great insights into those very same people. And he had a poem of Catullus, and then I went to Catullus, and it's mind-boggling in its intensity. It's so violent that I haven't been able to read the most violent one because it would be too rude. But I'll read you this one. "Lesbia, I am mad. My brain is entirely warped by this project of adoring and having you, and now it flies into fits of hatred at the mere thought of your doing well, and at the same time it can't help but seek what is unimaginable, your affection. This it will go on hunting for, even if it means my total and utter annihilation." Political reflections with Pope Francis. We discussed the difference between populismo and popularismo, distinguishing the politics of pleasing the people from the politics of for the people. Donald Tusk with Pontifex. "Beneath this mask there is more than flesh. Between this mask there is an idea. An idea is a bulletproof." Joshua Wong. "There is no end game. That's the infinity war that Hong Kong people are willing to engage in." Joshua Wong. "We will refuse Hong Kong turning into one country, one system." "The wounded kid was taken to Tiananmen Hospital. Dozens of Hong Kong police now stationing in the hospital and ready to arrest the kid." Dave Moss Isto. Kyle Bass, "Hong Kong capital controls are next. The ERO gives Lam eminent powers to seize bank accounts, turn off the internet, seize property and arrest at will. This all coming to you courtesy of Carrie and Z's great misadventure," he said. The FT, China and Hong Kong, the ultimate test of authoritarian rule. As the Dongfeng 41, a new Chinese missile capable of delivering 10 nuclear warheads to anywhere in the US, rumbled along Beijing's main avenue this week in China's biggest ever military parade, Xijin did not attempt to conceal his glee. "Don't mess with the Chinese people or intimidate them," tweeted Mr. Hu. Just hours later in Hong Kong, which returned to China's rule in 1997, a very different scene played out. Hundreds of thousands of pro-democracy protesters thronged the streets, some clashing violently with police. In one location, a crowd gathered to throw eggs at a portrait of Xi Jinping. the powerful Chinese leader who led the parade in Beijing. Every time an egg hit Mr. Xi's face, a cheer surged up from the crowd. Was Mr. Xi's missile-packed pageantry indicative of an emerging superpower or a brittle, paranoid regime? In the absence of direct elections, the popularity of authoritarian regimes is hard to gauge, but the outpourings of pride on Chinese social media this week suggest Mr. Xi's parade was a genuine hit with ordinary Chinese. Most Chinese viewed the parade with enormous pride and euphoria, says Yu Zi, Senior China Research Fellow at Chatham House, a UK think tank. Ruchir Sharma, Chief Global Strategist at Morgan Stanley, has found that since 1950 there have been 43 cases in which an economy grew at an average annual rate of 7% or more for a full decade. A full 35 of these booms, or 81%, took place under an authoritarian government. Beijing has no intention of abandoning its political model due to China's vast territory and complicated national conditions. The governance of China is uniquely difficult, said the government report. Without centralized, unified and firm leadership, China would have tended toward division and disintegration and caused widespread chaos beyond its own borders. Hong Kong is another data point illustrating the same troubling trend of a government that believes might is right and is totally dismissive of the enormous risks and potentially catastrophic consequences of its actions, says Min Zin Pei, professor at Claremont McKenna College in the US. In one frequent protester taunt, mainlanders are described as caged birds, too scared to emerge from behind their bars. Beijing is finding that Hong Kong is not the only place to where repression does not travel. Voters on the island of Taiwan, which Beijing pledges to take back before 2049 as part of its plan for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, have also been alienated by the mainland's assertiveness. The nature of the regime should be clear by its actions in Hong Kong, Xinjiang and Tibet, says Brigadier General Robert Spalding, a former senior official in the Trump administration's National Security Council. It is a totalitarian dictatorship bent on spreading its vision of IT-based social control as a means of securing the Chinese Communist Party's continued rule. This is a photograph of military vehicles carrying the DF-41 ballistic missiles as they roll during China's largest weapons parade. Birdie Word tweeted, "Don't think the mass ban is working very well." And I was referring to the pork apocalypse, and China is now breeding giant pigs the size of polar bears as the African swine fever causes a pork shortage. And then a fantastic article. There is frequently a coming to Jesus meeting in Beijing where any number of things can happen. From forcing him to sell off non-policy debt-inducing assets to accepting retirement to charges of corruption and a life sentence in prison. Alibaba's Jack Ma is still young, healthy, and his company is firing on all cylinders. Yet he recently stepped down as chairman at a handsome ceremony, posing as a rock star and singing a few tunes. The musical theme was appropriate. He'd been whistling past the graveyard for many years, as is the lot of prominent businessmen in the People's Republic of China. How a private business operates in a Communist Party-run state is a perpetual head-scratcher. However, Western businessmen with over 3 decades experience in China offered some insights. You see, Jack Ma's of China may be entrepreneurs, but they are as much Chinese Communist Party corporate trustees. And Ma's usefulness as a CCP corporate trustee has reached the end of its shelf life. Jack Ma, Alibaba were in effect used by the party to counter eBay's unexpected and stunning success in China. And in China, the party always wins. Under the mild-mannered Premier Hu Jintao, Ma became a national and international icon. He served many roles the party wanted China and the world to see. When Xi came to power in Davos was not big enough for Xi and Ma. Someone had to go. It was clear to a lot of people that Ma began to chafe under Xi's increasing expectation that trustees like Ma subordinate themselves entirely to Xi. Ma perhaps didn't know when to say when. As far as is known, Ma still has the land he designated preserved for the environment. As long as he steps down from Alibaba, acknowledges Xi's supremacy and only talks about the environment, he may be able to keep the land. If he falls afoul, Beijing will claim Ma purchased the land with black money, will want asset ownership turned over to the PRC government, a frequent tactic now when foreign real estate is the asset. Alibaba, like Huawei, HNA and similar ventures are licensed and documented as private companies, when in fact they're better thought of as a state-owned private enterprise company. Company founders are loyal CCP members. Companies receive all kinds of perks, including protection. Must use the company to fulfill CCP policy objectives, and then gives a whole list of things that they must do. And then saying, when the problem occurs, non-policy, usually debt-ridden ventures get sold off at fire sale prices. There's frequently a coming to Jesus meeting in Beijing where any number of things can happen to a trustee, from forcing him to sell off non-policy debt-inducing assets, to accepting retirement, to charges of corruption and a life sentence in prison, and no more access to the CCP's official black hair dye number 6. Indeed, CCTV showing court proceedings clips where the former celebrity tycoon now has white hair is the greatest indignity that can be levied on a person in political China. The citizenry knows justice, such as it is, has been served. And then talking about the CCP sword of Damocles also hangs over foreign companies in China, but there's no shortage of Western executives who think it will be different for them. They've got well-connected Chinese friends who love them, and anyway they are smarter than everyone else. But this only ends one way. Just wait a while and watch what happens to Elon Musk and Tesla after going all in on China. Musk should be glad he's not Chinese. He'll only lose his company. 17th of July, Ma Yun, aka Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba and Tai Chi master, visited Kenya, and I wrote about it. And I also was moderating a discussion which was co-hosted by Untitled Chapter with Jack Ma, and we've got that footage there if you want to watch that as well. Sack me if you dare, Boris Johnson will tell the Queen, according to the Sunday Times. Will dare the Queen to sack him, rather than resign as Prime Minister in an attempt to drive through Brexit on October the 31st. Cabinet ministers have revealed. In an unprecedented escalation of the constitutional crisis, senior aides said Johnson would not stand aside if his proposals were rejected by Brussels and MPs tried to unseat him to avert a no-deal Brexit. They said Johnson was prepared to squat in Downing Street even if MPs declared no confidence in his government and agree a caretaker Prime Minister to replace him. Sources say MPs and peers have even discussed the idea of Commons Speaker John Bercow taking on the job. Goodness, I wrote about this on the 5th of August under a title, What's Your Road Man? And I asked, the key question is this: can Boris Johnson self-eject Britain? Can he be stopped? And I think he can't. That's my political calculation. The currency, which is very, very beholden to this, is at 123.05, and I think we're going to see it slip below 120. Boris tweeted, great to hear you're no longer running scared. The voters have a choice, getting Brexit done with me or the pointless delay you're offering. Name the date, he said to Jeremy Corbyn. Utter chaos in Iraq. This is Baghdad. This was over the weekend. So many scenes like this coming in from many parts of the country. There are fears the death toll is far higher than the 31 reported so far. So we've really had this situation metastasize a little bit. We've had Iraq beginning to blow up. We've got Erdogan going in on the Kurds. The Kurds, it's just terrible. The way they're used and abused, and they've been used again by the Americans, and now they're set to be abused by Erdogan. It's just shocking. Did Trump just self-impeach, asks the New Yorker. In the 10 days since the House of Representatives launched its impeachment inquiry, Trump has spoken and tweeted thousands of words in public. He has called the investigation a coup and the press deranged. He has demanded his chief congressional antagonist, Little Adam Schiff, be brought up on treason charges. He has attacked the do-nothing Democrats for wasting everyone's time and energy on bullshit. How do you impeach a president who has created the greatest economy in the history of our country, entirely rebuilt our military into the most powerful it has ever been, cut record taxes and regulations, fixed the VA and gotten choice for our vets after 45 years, and so much more, he complained. He's calling it a hoax framed by the Democrats, fake whistleblower, fake news, the greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. Of course, this all refers to July 25th phone call with the President of Ukraine, but I think we'll find that every phone call this is a symptom of the disease and not the disease itself. The call in which he asked for the favour of having Ukraine investigate his 2020 political rival, Joe Biden, even as he was holding up hundreds of millions of dollars in US military aid, triggered the impeachment inquiry in the first place. Trump says it was perfect. On Thursday morning, he appeared to dispense with excuses altogether, no longer even bothering to contest the charge that he leaned on Ukraine to investigate Biden and his son Hunter. How do we know this? Because Trump did it again, live on camera from the White House lawn. In a demand that is hard to interpret as anything other than a request to a foreign country to interfere in the US election, Trump told reporters that Ukraine needs a major investigation into the Bidens. I would certainly recommend that of Ukraine, he added, shouting over the noise of the helicopter. He also volunteered, without being asked, that China should start an investigation into the Bidens too. You could practically hear the collective gasp in Washington. Republicans had spent days denying what Trump had more or less admitted to. As Trump keeps talking, he makes it more and more difficult for his supporters to mount an actual defense of his underlying behavior. It was as though Nixon in 1972 had gone out on the White House lawn and said, yes, I authorized the Watergate break-in and I'd do it again. It was as though Clinton in 1998 had said, yes, I lied under oath about my affair with Monica Lewinsky and I'd do it again. Twitter wags immediately began wondering if the president had just committed the nation's first act of self-impeachment. He isn't even bothering to deny the facts. He's saying, yes, I did it, and so what? His behavior, always erratic, has become noticeably more combative, angry, extreme. He was hurling insults at a record pace. Trump produced 690 tweets in August. In September, he reached a record for his presidency of 801 tweets, according to FactBase. So publicly agitated about this swift and unexpected turn in his fortunes that the week of September 23rd was the single most active tweeting week of his presidency. Ranted when he was with the Finnish president, Sauli Niinisto. Bit of an absurdist play. Finnish reporter, Finland is the happiest country in the world. Trump, Finland is a happy country. Finnish reporter, what can you learn from Finland? Well, you got rid of Pelosi, you got rid of Shifty Schiff. Finland is a happy country. He's a happy leader too. The president's ability to capture public attention is diminishing. He is caught in a cycle of greater and greater rhetorical excess. A cycle that predates the Ukraine scandal, but helps explain his otherwise inexplicable behaviour in responding to it. So we've got an extraordinary situation. The restraints on him are gone and they're not coming back. He has no discipline. He is combusting in front of our eyes. This is reality TV on a whole new level. Compare Bill Clinton, who, whilst ill-disciplined in his personal life, exercised discipline and control in a similar situation. Stupid Watergate is worse than the original. Watergate is an umbrella term, and yet it had as its centre a conspiracy in which Nixon and his Confederates plotted to destroy at least one of his strongest seeming rivals in the 1972 election campaign. Republican operatives set out to destroy Edmund Muskie of Maine in order to face a far weaker opponent, George McGovern of South Dakota. Nixon got his wish and won a 49-state landslide over McGovern. Nixon told Haldeman and Henry Kissinger, his national security advisor, God damn it, get in, get those files, blow the safe and get it. The following day he returned to the theme, get it done, I want the Brookings safe cleaned out. spent his last weeks in office as an erratic mess, drinking heavily, roaming the White House late at night and talking to the portraits of President past, bad Shakespeare. Nixon, even on the tapes, when he's talking conspiratorially and criminally, held himself together emotionally until the very end, Bernstein said. His emotional collapse only came in the final weeks when he knew how cornered he was. It was only then that he started talking to the pictures on the walls. This loss of control is ongoing with Trump. It's not about the final days, and his corruption is totally as we see it out front. He doesn't try to hide it. He doesn't try to hide the conflicts of interest or the lying. He's not a secretive conspirator. Then someone tweeted the shakedown starring Donnie Two Chins, Rudy Kaludi, and Pence the Fence. China, of course, rather cleverly, this is Wang Yi, China will not interfere in the internal affairs of the US, and we trust that the American people will be able to sort out their own problems. Now, the problem, what he's done is so clever, right? It means he's disavowing the US of the notion that they're allowed to say anything about anything regarding China. He's trapped, he's playing poker, holding 2 threes and suddenly putting all of his chips in. It's pure emotion, the mark of a panicking amateur. He is a linguistic warfare specialist, as I've said, Crooked Hillary, Lying Ted, Little Marco, Low Energy Jeb, he tweets in wrestling speak, lightweight Mark Rubio, was working hard last night. The problem is he's a choker, and once a choker, always a choker, meltdown. And I wrote about this a few weeks ago. It's all derived, there's always a face, short for baby face, or hero and a heel, a villain, Hulk Hogan and Dwayne The Rock Johnson are faces, Jake the Snake Roberts and Rick Rude are heels. Wrestling pits good against bad, a genuine He-Man against a phony rascal to emasculate his opponents. Trump uses the stroke, low energy Jeb, Mr. Magoo, Jeff Sessions, lying James Comey, rat Michael Cohen, highly conflicted Bob Mueller. Okay, let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 109.73. It's rebounded from below 109, but I think we're petering out and topping out here. Dollar index 98.864. Japanese yen 106.86. Swiss franc 0.9945. The pound 123.05, but I expect that to fall away. Australian dollar, where are we there? 0.6752. India rupee 70.827. South Korean won, that's firmer, 1192.25. The Rial 405.87, Egyptian pound 1630, and the Rand 1507.79, bang in the middle of its trading range 1450-1550. Dollar index, this is a chart from 50 pips. I still think we're going over 100, come what may, even if they cut again in October, which looks likely. 30th of September, I said sell the euro because I think parity is calling. And then Andreas Steno, euro dollar usually goes where inflation is telling it to go. Right now that is down. And then T commodity, euro dollar targeting 107.77. And I agree with him. Netflix, hated by most these days, but it has not closed this high in 11 sessions, the market here. In my article, Streaming Dreams, I wrote about Netflix. I went back to an article I read in 2012. People went from broad to narrow. And we think they will continue to go that way, spend more and more time in the niches, because now the distribution landscape allows for more narrowness. And I think essentially you've got a lot of US analysts who don't understand the international opportunity. That's why I remain bullish, and I think all these Johnny-come-latelys, they just don't have the experience and know-how that Netflix has built over these many, many years. I put out a conviction buy on Netflix, that was about 8-9 days ago at 270.75, we dropped below it, but we're now above it, thankfully. Short sellers pile into WeWork debt. It makes sense as a pile-on trade, all the sentiment, all the headlines have been bad, it's led to a feasting on a failed unicorn. WeWork's bonds now offer a nearly 12% yield to maturity. Well, you're not going to get your money back, are you? I don't think. Loser is Bitcoin, irrespective of good or bad narratives. Bitcoin is sold down another 3.9%. Where are we now? 7,875. You know, looking at that chart and going back to, I can go all the way to 1,000 and still stay in a bull market, and I think it might well do exactly that. because that's where we were in January 2017, if you can remember. Commodity markets, oil, third time is the charm. Looks like everybody has been washed out during the past weeks. Time for a bounce here. That's the market here. We're currently at $52.96. This is another chart from T Commodity, inverted head and shoulder pattern building on 4 hours time frame. Looks bullish to me as well. Gold, where are we? 1502.50. I'm not bullish about gold at all, but I think you've got to sell it closer to 1540. Let's turn now to sub-Saharan Africa. The crowd at Zeng Ayong Stadium in Libreville chanted, "Ya Ali, Ali the Great." Bongo looked relaxed as he responded, I'm here for you, I will always be here." Bongo suffered the stroke while attending a conference in Saudi Arabia, spent months abroad recovering before returning to the capital. So he's now reappeared. "You can't imagine the joy I feel being here among you," he said. Very interesting article in The Intercept by Nick Turse, why closing the Congo-Rwanda border could spread Ebola. A Chora is a resourceful man, a clever man, a man who can get things done. He wears no uniform, but he has an easy way with soldiers. He's no diplomat, but he knows something about international relations. The literal translation of Chora is unimportant. In street Swahili, it's a smuggler. One evening, as I laid low in a compound bordering the no-man's land between Congo and Rwanda, I peeked over the wall as the Chora plied his trade. He crossed the border twice within an hour, first to fetch water, then to buy juice, just to show me how easy it was. What a Chora does might be legal, but it's also as inconsequential as it is common. After all, in the grand scheme of things, does smuggling a little whiskey or used clothes really matter? Perhaps the only reason to care is a virus, a hemorrhagic fever, and a disease all goes by one terrifying name, Ebola. Ebola may be the most feared disease on the planet. Its fatality rate can reach 90%. The nightmare scenario, according to experts, is the virus sets loose in an African city with lots of close contact and insufficient public health resources. The results could be catastrophic, worse than the West African outbreak earlier this decade that killed more than 11,000 people. In June and again in August, Congolese infected with Ebola crossed into Uganda, the first time the disease jumped the border during this outbreak. In August, suspected cases surfaced in neighbouring Tanzania. And then talking about the border, $100 million in cross-border commerce. The DRC is Rwanda's largest trading partner. That's Goma. 14,000 people per day cross at the Grand Barrier. We've had too many instances of people crossing borders or coming from the infected areas down to Goma. And Goma is the gateway to Rwanda and the rest of the world. It's the point at which Ebola will most likely be transmitted abroad. And then there's some tremendous photographs that they've taken, and then describing the worst case scenario, of course. Health workers in Butembo here carrying a coffin containing the body of an Ebola victim. Congolese people line up to wash their hands, get their temperatures taken at an Ebola screening station between Butembo and Goma. The Petit Barrier in Goma, the primary crossing between Congo and Rwanda. 70,000 people cross back and forth. I wrote about Ebola in October 2014 when I said it's all about its escape velocity. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. Mozambique says Exxon is to back Africa's biggest ever LNG project. Cost as much as $33 billion to build, the biggest ever in Africa. 15.2 million tonne per year gas liquefaction and export project is even bigger than the one that Total is building nearby, will transform Mozambique's $15 billion economy. 4th of June 2012, I wrote about Maputo boomtown. We had some twists and we had some turns, but we're back to that scenario. This is the Maputo evening. It's a beautiful place to visit, wonderful flavoursome tiger prawns. Samora Machel, this is a statue of him in the Praça de la Independencia in Maputo. Invoking the repulsive prospect of alleged forced labour is a new nomenclature for seeking to bar Zimbabwe's diamonds from international markets. The US has barred these Maranga diamonds from the markets, and this is a huge source of cash for the ZANU-PF regime, and therefore this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, in my opinion. South African all shares up 2.38% year to date. Dollar rand, as I said, 1507. We remain in this 1550 range. Egyptian pound 16.30. EGX 30 up 9.07% year to date. Nigeria down 14.14% year to date. Ghanaian cedi, worst performer year to date, down 12.4% against the dollar. Ghana Stock Exchange down 11.92%. Look at this comparison: Kenya, Senegal, and Zambia. Eurobond Zambia. Essentially, the Eurobonds are telling you it's in default. Leave out this sexy and phony annual growth rate of 5.9% manufactured by the CBK and the Treasury. And Ahmed Nasir, very renowned lawyer here, asks, what is the true state of the economy? Is it in a recession? 15%. In a depression? 17%. In ICU? 34%. In Langata Cemetery? 34%. Number of savers and value of savings have dropped to a 13-year low. Value of imported goods have dropped as well. This is a chart of the February 2018 Eurobond issue. 10-year yield at 6.8%, 30-year at 8.2%. Kenya shilling 103.85. NSC trading on a PE ratio of 11.2. Nairobi all share up 4.84% year to date. NSE 20 down 13.93% year to date. Final link, you can dive into any share listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Thank you.